Hey guys, and welcome back to another Factorio Friday Facts discussion with Scarhoof.
Hello, everyone.
And I think this will be quick because I have a very quick response. No. Alright, that's it. Just no. This is... I don't get it, but we'll discuss it. So, a little bit from Covrex about the 0.16 stabilization period. Essentially after 16.8, there were introduced, I had some problems, quite a few problems, but 7 releases later in the past week has been enough to stabilize it. We are finally in a state where we are fixing more bugs than are reported, which is really good. Seems that most urgent things are to be finished soon, and we could find the needed time to dive into the belt logic to be able to consolidate it. This is my plan for the next week. So I assume this means the belt compression.
Yeah, I think so.
And then the entire rest of this is about...
It's a big fat no.
It's a big fat no about bots. And now, before everyone leaves or just throws something across the room like I was about to, removing bots from the game is not going to happen. He even says that. But they are considering nerfs. I don't want to read this entire thing, but essentially Twinson writes that, ever since he started Factorio, he enjoys belts a lot more, and has always kind of been a bot hater. I think that belts are a lot more interesting, and the bots, trivialize a base and are just too easy and too overpowered. His argument is that bots are simply fundamentally better. Bots basically cheat by teleporting, plus they're extremely easy to build and expand. So he had a crazy idea of removing them, which I don't know that we really need to go into because he says that that's not actually going to happen. Some interesting ideas about simplifying them.
Maybe combining logistics and construction bots into just a single robot.
Yeah, so that could be interesting, but he does say, hopefully you aren't mashing your desk and writing out an angry email. Logistics box won't be removed from the game, mostly because the features have been developed and polished quite a bit. Also, many players love the feature, and we've all become used to it over time. But think of it in a different way. Imagine there were two parallel universes, one with belts and no bots, and then one with the bots. And he says he would prefer the one without the bots, from the get-go. But let's see. Let's return to reality in the game we have now. Quite recently, he's realized bots aren't as bad as he thought. Logistics system placed very late in the tech tree, which is nice. I think that was a change with 0.15, is they did make it later in the tech tree.
Yeah, it's behind high-tech science packs, I believe. Yeah. And I like that spot, by the way. One of my replies to, I think I replied to you on Reddit, was I like where it's placed. I think it's, you get your construction bots not too far into the game, and then you really have to push to get to those first few high-tech science packs. And I actually really like that stage of the game because you have to make a decision on where do you invest your resources for those first few high-tech science packs. Do you go to increase your armor? Because I think there's 3 or 4 key items that are locked behind that first thing. Do you put them into logistics robots? Do you put them into power armor? Or do you put them into actually, I think power armor you already have. You can get at that point, but it's the fusion reactor.
Yeah.
Because up to that point, you're just dying with. I mean, we ran into this with our last playthrough with the platform series. Is we were just dying. We were constantly running out of power. So I like that stage of the game, and I like that you have to choose where your resources are going to go. Do you go for the logistics robots, or do you go for upgrading your power armor? And I think there was one other key thing that you can go for at that point too.
Yeah. So it's in a good place in the tech tree. But he says the fact that you get this almost game-breaking feature is not so bad because it's late in the game. Well, first off, I don't think it's game-breaking.
Right.
I mean, I feel like that is just entirely his point of view. It's certainly not game-breaking.
Yeah, you don't have to use bots if you don't want to. In fact, there are achievements for not using them, right?
I think that's a really, we're going to continue discussing, but I think that's a good summary for our response to this. is you don't have to use bots. Why nerf something because you think it's too strong? You don't have to use it. Like, that's a great thing about Factorio, and that they would ruin by doing something like this. You can play however you want. If you don't like bots, don't use them. Hell, don't even research them. You know, or if you don't like belts, then as soon as you get bots, tear up all your belt stuff. It's like, it's like
with your bots.
Yeah, with your bots. It's like, come on. If you don't like doing it, then don't do it. You know, it's not that complicated.
Right.
And
I mean, honestly, you could even make it to the bots without even having to use belts. You could just ferry stuff around. You could just push your research as fast as possible to get to your logistics robots, and just really have a basically you be the bot. You just move resources around or something like that, or very minimal belt input.
Yeah. So now this is what really gets me, man. I feel like if I really wanted to express my opinion, we would need a bleep button. But so
we've needed that for a few weeks now, haven't we?
I mean, seriously, it's like it's all been leading up to this crap. Like, we are still looking to incentivize belt building a bit more, since it's the more fun way to play Factorio for you. Like, like what? Like, come on, it's not more fun for everybody,
right?
In trying to incentivize it by making something else weaker just because you don't like the other thing is an absolutely terrible way to do it. It's like that's how you lose your community support and piss off a lot of people. Yeah.
Because the larger the game gets, the more diverse of an audience you're going to have. And to continue selling thousands and thousands of copies of this game and keep our lovely developers employed, they're going to need to make some hard decisions on whether they want to shrink down the gameplay and only have like hardcore engineer nerd type people who are playing this game, or do they want to give it a more broad appeal and have a lot more people breathing life into this? You know, maybe people who weren't necessarily as technically minded can get through to the bots, and then the game becomes a lot more fun to them. You know, I remember a few years ago when I was playing, I would get to a certain point of the game where all I was doing was setting up more outposts constantly.
Yeah.
And I got so sick of that. And I immediately went onto the forums and I looked and I found RSO. And ever since then, I played with RSO until they made some major overhauls with the game, with the ore spawning. And at that point, I felt like the game was good enough with a few tweaks to not require RSO. But there was a time where my entire end game was just setting up and taking down outposts constantly.
Right.
I didn't even have time to build the factory. You know, it was not fun anymore. And I nearly quit the game until I discovered RSO.
Yeah.
So the game has to be fun. It's not just a simulator. It has to be enjoyable, and there has to be gameplay, and it needs to be a diverse gameplay for a wide variety of game styles and opinions and stuff. And that's why I like Factorio, because it gives you the building blocks to do things your way.
Yeah, exactly. And the key thing is that what you said, it needs to be fun, but for a diverse audience. Yeah, sure, nerfing bots would be fun to him or other developers that share this opinion or other people, but it's going to ruin the game for anybody who doesn't share that opinion. It's like, now, why not take the alternative and make belts better, and then you get everybody happy? Because making belts better, the people who use bots, you know, it won't affect them, they don't care. Or maybe they'll start to like belts more, and then the people who like belts will like them even more. And it's like, you know, and they go over some insane suggestions like increasing the power consumption, decreasing the maximum stack size bots can carry to 2 items, or buffering belts by adding a stack belt tier. Well, the belt one is actually a really good idea. Which I think would be a good solution. But the bot ones, it's like, it's just, I mean, like, nerfing the bots in general is stupid, but like, increasing the power consumption, okay, you just build more solar, which is like free energy anyway. And then if you decrease the stack size, you just add more bots. Like, and then in turn also just destroy your game performance. So I don't, what fires me up about this is it's like, why are you even considering this? Like, that's the concerning part to me, is it's like, this, among with a few other decisions that we've discussed, it's like, why are you even considering this? It just seems so absurd.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting conversation. They, like we've talked about in the last few weeks, they probably see data from that we don't see. And again, if they had shared maybe some underlying data that shows that there are some inherent problems with bots, then this wouldn't be as much of a divisive conversation, right? But it seems like they're just saying we just don't like bots. We feel it's too easy, and therefore we want to make it go away. It wasn't that case with the iron thing a few weeks ago because they showed us the data. Everybody was complaining about this. I don't see that many people complaining about bots other than to say it's easy mode. But again, there's that fundamental thing. If you don't have to play them if you don't want to. Yeah. And have they considered maybe a button when you create the world? Click no bots.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got real world, we got death world, just no bot world.
Mm-hmm. And there you go. So easy. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I mean, what makes the thing is, right, that the issue, in my point of view, is it's not that there's problems with bots, it's that belts aren't as good.
Not exactly. And that's really the core problem, right? Especially when you get to mega bases. When you get to a certain size, the belts are just inferior in almost every aspect. They don't transfer stuff nearly as quickly. It's a massive UPS drain.
Yeah, even with the optimizations.
Yeah, and that is its core underlying problem, particularly for the highest level of the gamers for these mega bases. Is it's all about UPS. It really doesn't matter how complex it is, because these are the guys in my forum post or my Reddit post was basically saying this. We got people who spend their day at work in a spreadsheet trying to figure out how to optimize their belt layouts or their, stuff like this. People have made entire programs to help us play this game better. Mm-hmm. So clearly, and they spend hours figuring this stuff out outside of the game before they even log into the game.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's making it easier. It's actually making it more complex because they're trying to work around the game mechanics and the core underlying code base to figure out how to get a certain level of production out of it. And if bots are 10 times better than belts, don't nerf the bots, because that's just going to lower the overall fun that everyone's going to have. If fun is equal to how many 1,000 per minute you can put out, then that's what they're limiting.
Exactly. And I mean, I think that's a takeaway here for any devs who may watch and other people is, make the belts better. Like the bots themselves, there's nothing wrong with them. They're really good, but belts just aren't. And that's the problem with the belts, not the bots.
Right.
And it's like, there's multiple options. You could do the stack thing. You had a really interesting idea with like crates, where you can like crate items up. There's been a few mods that kind of did this, where it like compresses them into like a box and you can move those on belts and then you just have to uncompress them at the end.
Yep.
And
which, of course, adds logistics issues on both sides of the belt or the train or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm gonna pull up, because you mentioned to me, I hadn't seen this. Our seating made a really good point on the forum or on the Reddit discussion for this, which I have up now. Is Arsene says, my take, I love belts, but there comes a point when I'm building a factory where I want more throughput in some area, and literally all I can do, because I'm already using express belts and stack inserters, is copy-paste the setup. It doesn't add more logistic challenges. The copy-pasted setup will operate at 100% the speed of the last one. It's boring. There's no new mechanics. So that's like a really good argument against the belt. And then robots make new challenges. If I want to increase throughput of robots, I need more row ports for them to charge at, but I can't just build 500 row ports off to the side and expect them to operate efficiently. I need to incorporate them into the build, so that they charge efficiently. The robots aren't the perfect solution to everything. Belts have much faster reaction time to moving items short distances, and trains much better at longer distances. Belts have a throughput ceiling from the very moment you place it that never changes no matter how well you design your factory. There's no new mechanic or challenge to discover. It's just build it once, copy paste until you have the throughput you want. And that's disappointing.
Yep. And going back to it makes it, quote, too easy. He's just describing how you can make it, quote, too easy with belts. There's nothing to think about.
Exactly.
You just copy paste it. So, what's easy? I would also argue, I've been wanting this for a long time. I think the logistics system needs an overhaul. Right now, the logistics RoboPort is the same size no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't adjust it. I really think we need the ability to maybe with a circuit condition. They did this with stack inserters, right? You can go into the stack inserter and you can tell it to only move one item at a time, right?
Right.
Depending on what you need in that specific area. I really think we should have the ability to shrink the size of the RoboPort down to either nothing or 5 or something like that. Because right now, if you want to have 2 RoboPorts next to one another, you cannot have your RoboPorts more than 51 blocks apart.
Mm-hmm.
You're severely limited, which means you can never have a charging option right up against the edge of that, which again limits our ability to make interesting builds.
Yeah.
If we have the ability to take those down to nothing, we could actually have RoboPorts out in the middle of nowhere that are just there for charging.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're not even attached to a logistics network or something like that. It would give us some fascinating options and give us more building blocks to make more interesting builds.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. There's tons of stuff that could be done. And just to finish out our seating thing, is he said he's been campaigning for stack belts as a tier after express belts for a long time, but so far only V has taken to the idea. I expect because the others simply don't build a base long enough that they actually hit the limits of express belts, which is a very good point. And I love that our seating is this honest, because so many arguments on the forum discussions are kind of the same thing as that, that bots are OP or whatever, and that, belts are still super good and stuff. But I think the thing is, a lot of these people making these arguments haven't actually built a base to a point where they realize these issues our seating is pointing out. And it's like, I don't know. It's just really...
It goes back to the diversity of the player base, right? I still see posts from people who are like, I've played this game 300 hours and I still haven't launched a rocket. Still. I mean, we've been seeing those posts for years of hundreds of hours of gameplay, and they haven't even built a rocket yet. Right? Or then you have other people who are like launching it every 2 hours, kind of, after starting the game. So it's such a diverse group of people. Just give us the building blocks and let us decide how we want to play the game.
Exactly. Don't force us to play the way you want to play as a developer. And then just quickly, I know you can't see this, but just for people on my screen, Chad in the Discord brought up a few really good posts from the forums that he's linked. One of them is what you said. If you don't want to use them, you can just not research them or don't use them. Bots make the primary restriction in the player's base ability to feed the base, which is actually a really interesting point, right? Because with belts, they're limiting to where your restriction is pretty much however many belts you can put down and get to where they need to go, right? But with bots, the restriction moves to how much resources can you feed the base, right? And it's a totally different dynamic that's still difficult, still challenging and complex. And someone else says that, belts are throughput limited and a huge UPS killer no matter the optimizations you make to them. You can't build a huge mega base without using bots. If you nerf the bots and all you achieve is going backwards, bases maps become smaller on average again, and all just to force belts into people's faces. And just all kind of stuff like this, and it's like it just I think it's just silly. And I mean, at the end here, they show this picture of this self-contained 1K signs per minute base that was on Reddit, which is really interesting. I mean, I really enjoyed looking at this base, and they said, I want to give a shout to forum member Ultram. We analyzed his save while we were having bot versus bot discussions. His save proves that bots can get ridiculously powerful, but at the same time, it shows there's a lot of fun to be had with bots if you challenge yourself to make something. Duh. Exactly. Yep. If you present yourself with challenges, the bots can be complex. I don't... in my mega base, right, my sitting supports the space thing, we spent so many hours troubleshooting and theory crafting builds to make bots work better for UPS reasons, which is what you said, right? Is Mega Base builders focus on UPS and how to like do the most you can with the UPS. And it's like, sure, my entire base, there's not a single belt in the entire map, but I had an awesome time doing it, and it was by no means simple. Like, figuring out these builds, like, what can we move here? How can we adjust the robo ports and, like, the logistics chests and move them here to reduce bots by a bit? And it's like, if you think bots are simple and overpowered, I mean, they are really strong, but if you think they're simple and just, like, not complex at all, then you clearly haven't gotten to a point to actually realize that that's not true. Like, then you've just been building huge bot networks and just throwing bots at it constantly and thinking that they're really good.
Right. And it goes back to a fundamental game design theory. The reason why Minecraft is so popular is because it gives you the basic building blocks and it lets you play the game how you want. And people are going to debate whether more blocks should be added, or I know everybody wants stairs and slabs, and especially like vertical slabs. The argument could be made and will never end, especially because you have so many opinions on the matter. But giving people the core things to allow them to play the game they want and tell their own story while they're playing the video game is what has given so much life into that game. And Factorio is very similar. We can still tell our own stories. We don't have the building and the beauty aspects that Minecraft does, but we have much more technical aspects than Minecraft does. And I think that's why this game is so popular, is because we have multiple ways of playing the game.
Right. Exactly. And they're taking away that by nerfing bots. Or really any major part of the game,
Yep.
So,
I mean, just look at the backlash of how many people hated the loaders a year or so ago. It was immediate. People are like, no, this is too overpowered. And it's basically so overpowered that everybody has to use this one item.
Yeah.
Right? Bots have never been that point. Nobody is saying, like, bots are so overpowered that I have to use them.
Right, exactly.
But loaders were. It was very clear that it was so overpowered, and by taking it back to the drawing board, they gave us stack inserters, and I think stack inserters was perfect. It gave us more throughput, which is what people needed, but it gave us a new item that gave us more complexity, and it allowed some better and neater builds from it.
Exactly, and the same thing can be done here. Instead of killing bots, give us the stacked belts or the crates. Same thing. It helps solve their problem of belts not being good, and also adds something new and interesting to the game, not taking away from it.
Right.
I mean, I think that's it. I mean, I could rant about this forever, but I think we've pretty much made the point clear that I don't know if these devs are like completely off the rocker or what's going on, but I really hope that they don't change bots at all, because that will probably be the last time I ever update Factorio, is never to update to whatever thing they do.
Yep. Leave bots alone.
Come on, man. I just want to play the game how I want. So you have any other thoughts?
Nope.
All right. Well, we would love to hear your guys' thoughts, and if you have a strong opinion, leave it on the forums and the subreddit discussion for this.
Yep.
And let them know. So I think that's going to do it. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed our bit of a rant and fun, but we will see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.